Hello and welcome to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the News Director here at GNAT-TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. It's also a pleasure to have with us here in the studio today Mr. Jim Gulley Jr., who is running for the position of Sheriff of Bennington County. He's challenging the present incumbent office holder, Sheriff Chad Schmidt, who is running for re-election. Both are running as Democrats, and the primary election will be held on August 14th. Today is Monday, July 23rd, and early voting is already underway, so no reason to wait if you've already made up your mind, but hopefully you'll find our discussion today informative and interesting and help shape your thinking around which candidate you want to support in the primary. There are no Republicans running in the election, so this primary election result will probably be the one to determine who will be the next county sheriff. So it's a pleasure to have you with us, and Jim, great to have you with us today as well. Thank you for making the time to come by and talk with us a little bit about some of your ideas on what the role of the county sheriff should be. By way of introduction, I should add that Mr. Gulley is a veteran police officer with the Bennington Police Department. He's also a law enforcement instructor and a lifelong resident of Bennington. So I guess, Jim, just to get us started here, tell us a little bit about your background in law enforcement and the reasons why you chose to throw your hat into the ring on the sheriff's race.
Certainly, sir. Well, thank you very much for having me. I very much appreciate it. And just for clarification, it's Manchester Police Department. I've worked for Bennington for 14 years. I was hired by Chief Richard Gauthier, now the director of the Vermont Police Academy, back in 2003. I served with Bennington Police Department for approximately 14 years, served as a mid-level, in mid-level management. Also worked narcotics. I was assigned to the Southern Vermont Drug Task Force, which is operated by the Vermont State Police, while working for Bennington. I was given an opportunity to expand my career, which I was asked, and I took the position to become an educator, a law enforcement instructor for the Southern Vermont Career Development Center, which was a wonderful and is a wonderful experience. I'm also a Manchester police officer. I work for the town of Manchester, and there also my focus is working narcotics cases, purchasing narcotics through confidential informants, also working with the FBI and the ATF in order to deal with the worst of the worst, those that are being charged through federal indictments, those that are selling guns, and those who are trafficking large amounts of heroin, fentanyl into our communities. To go back, I am married to a wonderful lady, Katie, and I have two young boys, a 7 and a 4-year-old, Colin and Logan. Numerous animals, horses, dogs, cats. But in order to talk about my education level, I attended MAU. I also attended Castleton University, where I received my bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a minor in history, because I love history. And while working for Bennington Police Department for some time, I knew that I wanted to advance my my knowledge base and to continue with my education. And so I subsequently enrolled and have completed my Master's of Public Administration through Norwich University. So we are here today.
And so what made you think that this was a good point in your career to kind of jump in and try to run for the county sheriff post? Well,
there are numerous reasons, but I would say the first that is the most compelling is that since 2010 I've been very heavily involved in narcotics. So I have had the, I won't call it the privilege, but yet I've had the honor of helping those who have been addicted. I've also been there for those who have lost loved ones, both children and parents, grandparents. But also, I have clearly identified what this major problem is that's plaguing our communities. And not only through the amount of crime that has occurred in our county, but also the increasing death rates that are being caused from the opioid epidemic. And it's not just the opioid epidemic. I feel that I would make the better sheriff because I have a vision that would work, that will help people heal, that will bring our community back to where it was before fentanyl and opioids, and we're destroying families, businesses, communities. But also, sir, I would say that I plan on working with groups such as Manchester Fed Up, the Collaborative, One Heartbeat, the Vermont Department of Health, and also the Bennington Homeless Coalition, in order to get those, when we come into contact with an individual who is either looking for help or who has been arrested and is seeking recovery treatment programs, or mental health, which would be UCS, or they are homeless. We have those institutions already put in place under one umbrella. Not everybody is running in a silo where they're sharing bits of information all to themselves. And I feel that as sheriff, I can put all of that under one umbrella. And we can all work together in helping people. And also being a part of the Bennington County Addiction Coalition, which is what Manchester Fed Up has started in the first place, and doing a wonderful job at that.
So at the moment, you feel that these organizations, such as the ones you just mentioned, they are operating in silos? Is that what you feel is lacking? Is that sort of broad overall approach?
We are really working hard, and there has been a lot of advancement in organizations who are sharing information. But in the past, organizations were not really so much talking to each other in depth. I know that the Bennington County Addiction Coalition has really started that movement. There is a lot of support. I know that I go, and I have seen you there. And there are a lot of caring people with the vision to heal those who need to be healed, answer questions that, whereas people have questions, where to get help, or just being there for people in general.
Is it your sense that the opioid epidemic, which has been discussed at great length over the past 4 or 5 years, do you feel like the trend line is getting better, or are we just sort of stuck in neutral and still not really making any progress towards finding some workable solutions to it all?
Well, peer-reviewed research has shown that the prescription pills, because there's 3 forms of opioids, just so we get that straight. You have your prescription pills, you have heroin, and then you have your synthetic heroin. Synthetic heroin is your fentanyl, which is made in a lab, controlled mostly by the Mexican cartels and the Chinese cartels. And also you can purchase it over the black web if you wish, and it can be mailed to your house if you have the proper software and knowledge on how to maneuver oneself through the black market, the black internet. But what we're finding is that there has been a significant increase or spike in the use of fentanyl-related overdoses, a decrease in the prescription pills, heroin overdoses. Last year we lost approximately, I believe, 107 people to overdoses.
Is that in the state of Vermont?
In the state of Vermont.
Okay.
And that is ranging from the fiscal year, January 1st to December 31st. Right now, we have lost approximately 77, and we still have approximately 6 months to go. We've had approximately 300 overdoses, and we've already deployed well over 320 Narcan units, and that's coming from the Vermont Department of Health in the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. So to answer your question, sir, and I've been approached that this is a scare tactic. I assure you it is not. We need to improve. We need to institutionalize better effective measures and means of combating this problem. And I'm the man to do so.
Do you think people who are caught up in this whole difficult situation as users of fentanyl, heroin, or whatever opioid, should be treated differently than people who are distributing it or selling it or pushing it?
So there are different types of people who I'll explain when it comes to the narcotic investigation world. You have your individual user. The user can be two types of people. The user can be, I will go out and I will purchase it through my own means, through my own funds, or they will go out and they will commit crimes, and those crimes being larceny, retail theft, because what happens is that the drug dealer or the person of interest that is in control of the amount at that particular time will put out a list, so to speak, and they'll say, I want a flat screen TV, 70-inch. Hypothetically speaking, it's too big, but and then they'll that's right. And then they'll say, I need these pairs of shoes. I need item 1, 2, and 3. Go steal it for me. So this person will then go out and they'll commit retail thefts, and they'll bring it to the person of interest, and then that gets sold through the black market. Every community has one. So that's how person one will purchase narcotics as the user. The other is that the trafficker will then come to this user who is now a dealer, and the dealer will then have the addiction. Let's just say they're using 50 bags a day at $20 a bag, whereas I have worked with confidential informants that are using 100 bags a day of heroin. And they can't sustain that price. It's too costly. So the trafficker, who is outreached through some form of organized crime, will then come into the community, give this person however many bags they need to appeal their own vice, but yet they have to sell just as much into the community. So there are your two different users. And then you have your trafficker. Now your trafficker is an individual who will look very proper. They dress up in the suit and tie. They drive a very normal car. They will hire individuals to make it look like that they are traveling through the area as a family. They're the ones that are looking at this as an economic or through economic means. They're not looking at this as obtaining one's vice in order to feel a euphoric feeling or to sell in order to obtain that euphoric feeling. The trafficker is the one that I'm looking for. The trafficker is the one that, unless you staunch that flow of opioids or the flow of cash/firearms that are leaving our communities in Vermont, going into areas that have stricter gun laws, how can I help those who are struggling with addiction if I can't staunch the flow of it coming in the first place? That's the first pillar. That's part of my first vision.
Okay.
And I'll discuss the second when we continue.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in some of the work you've been doing in Manchester. You mentioned you've been involved with drug investigations. Has it been like a lot of it just the undercover work that you were talking about earlier?
A lot of it is undercover work. Also through Manchester Police Department and Chief Hall, who has been wonderful, and as well as the administration in the town of Manchester. We have been aggressively seeking out those trafficking large amounts of lethal narcotics into our communities. So speaking about a case that we had some time back, there was an individual, and please I'll leave his name out, who was trafficking approximately a pound of heroin a week into Bellows Falls, Bennington, and Manchester. Every week he was making $50,000 in cash. Upon my first day's working patrol in Manchester, within that day one, in 6 months, we had numerous federal indictments for trafficking large amounts of fentanyl into Manchester. Now, there has been a press release put out to that. You can search it. But yet that's not common because those cases are federal indictments, and federal indictments do not release press releases. So, but yet we've been very, very busy, and we still are here. But not only that, sir, it's not about the arrest. It's about offering the help. So when I deal with a person that I have placed in custody, they are at their most vulnerable point. And what I've learned through my education and training is that they need treatment that very day. So what we have been doing is we have been trying our best, and we have been institutionalizing means where we have people who will come in and offer that treatment day one, the day of the arrest. Instead of just being the cold-hearted individual, issue you the citation, point my finger at you and jiggle it around and kick you out the door. Because we know, and I know firsthand, that moments later, you're going to be right back into it. Again, it's the euphoric feeling. And they call that the blanket of love. So when you're feeling down and out and you're at your lowest point, of course you're going to seek it out. I'm trying to change that.
Wow, interesting. Well, okay, so beyond the opioids situation, which of course is a gigantic problem, what would be some of your other goals or priorities if you're elected to be the sheriff that would change the way things are done at the sheriff's office from the current status quo?
Well, through a couple of things. I know that if it's measured, it can be managed. And through my education, I know that I have, and I'm particular on policy, but not only that, but measuring rather than based upon intuition. And what I mean by that is that how do we know if we're headed in the right direction, sir? How do we know if our sheriff's department is actually indeed effective? How do we know if any of our law enforcement agencies are effective? We need to measure those results rather than base it upon intuition. And what I plan on doing is I plan on utilizing my education and also research methods, talking to members of the community, whether it be through qualitative or quantitative data, making sure that we are on the right path. Because if we are not, we will then fix it. But not only that, constantly, I identify it as the SARA model. Scan, analyze, respond, assess. And it's the ever constant circle. Scanning, analyzing, responding to it if need be, and reassessing. Because I know that when you implement something or you institutionalize something, it's not just going to be that way forever, and I'm going to turn my back on it, and it will just be effective there ever after. It needs constant scanning, analyzing, and reassessment. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's a very interesting point. I guess, I was just thinking, a lot of people are probably a little unclear about what exactly the Sheriff's Department office does. I mean, we see your patrol cars out on the road and giving out speeding tickets, and hopefully I'm not going to be one of them at any point in the near future. But and I know that also part of your the role of the office is to transport folks who are in prison or incarcerated for court appearances.
Yes.
Are those the two main things, or is there more to it?
There's much more. The Sheriff's Department is a very unique organization. And the uniqueness of the organization is what allows me to bring forth my vision into our county. But to answer your question, the Sheriff's Department is responsible for two circumstances by law. One is to serve writs, formal documents that are issued by the court. The second is to transport those who have been placed in custody, who need to be transported whether to district court or to another correctional institution, and so on and so forth. However, right now, there are circumstances that are involved in the Sheriff's Department, such as civil process. There are patrols that are conducted by the Sheriff's Department, which would articulate a speeding ticket now and again. In my campaign, I'm being viewed as not being well-rounded or being particularly pinpoint or focused on one particular thing, being that of the opioid issue. That's not true. What I plan on doing is when I become sheriff is I'm going to analyze, And I'm going to see how to make the current daily routine of the Sheriff Department more effective, where people, the tax base that are going to be putting forth their money, and they do, they get their funds from the county, as well as from areas in which they've received from contracts, how that money could be spent better. And are we getting everything out of the Sheriff's Department that we could be getting? Because there are areas to improve.
Now, one of the questions that's come up, at least it was discussed in one of the interviews that appeared in the Bennington Banner not so long ago, was this business about a 5% administrative fee, which I confess I knew nothing about until I read that story. So what is this administrative fee, and you know, why is it set for 5%?
Well, the reason why I discussed the 5% administrative fee is because my new vision will cost money. And I am not, and what I mean by my new vision is adding a unique new service to the Sheriff's Department, which is identified as the County Sheriff Investigation Unit and the County Sheriff Interdiction Team. And what it consists of as an interdiction team is it consists of approximately 3 deputies, and they will be highly trained deputies in order to seek out the drug traffickers and/or work with narcotic cases through intelligence-based policing, community-based policing, and evidence-based policing. 5%. Now, 5% is what the sheriff can keep by law. I believe it is Statute 24 VSA 291. In that section, it articulates that monies earned by the sheriff or through the Sheriff's Department can be kept up to 5%. So as of now, the Sheriff's Department is in 2017, because I've reviewed all the financial disclosures, a $1.2 million agency. And those are monies that can be kept by the sheriff. So in order to pay for my new vision, on top of seeking out grants, on top of seeking out asset forfeiture claims, because the majority of the cases I will be investigating will be federal indictments where we keep 80% of the funds and 20% goes back to the federal government. 5% of that will be rolled back into my vision in order to kickstart my programs. Now, 5% of $1.2 million, I add into a slight argument with one of my family members. And I said, okay, fine, let's give back $200,000. So let's just look at $1 million. That's $50,000, sir. But that's not $50,000 in a 4-year term. That's $50,000 every year. So the more aggressive or the more money the Sheriff's Department makes, the more revenue the sheriff can keep. So the more aggressive they are in contracts and seeking out and charging towns or people or security details, the more money the sheriff gets to put in his own pocket on top of the $80,000 or $81,000 a year in benefits they get from the state. I plan on taking that 5%, rolling it back into my programs, will subsequently be rolled back into the community I serve, or communities I serve.
Mm-hmm. Now, 3 towns in Bennington County, Bennington, Manchester, and Winhall, have their own police departments.
Yes.
Other communities, such as Sunderland, where we are now, contract with either the county sheriff's office or the state police for traffic control. Is that an area you would be looking to see perhaps expand, or think that there's something more you folks would be doing to help the smaller communities that don't have their own police departments with one thing or another?
So over time, within the last year, I've been paying close attention to the media. And I've also been listening to what people have been saying. They're looking for something more. And working for the State Police Drug Task Force, now you have to, please don't mind, sir, but I can't go into depth about the criteria of the Drug Task Force, because that is very important information that they like to keep confidential. However, I will say that the Drug Task Force is in control of 3 counties. Okay, Addison County, Rutland County, and Bennington County, and there are a very limited number of those investigators who cover the worst of the worst, handle the worst of the worst cases. My vision, I intend on bringing so that we can cover Bennington County. And in doing so, we'd be gathering intelligence, meaning, so if you owned a convenience store, and that convenience store was burglarized, windows shot out or busted out, your cash register completely torn up and gone, your safe torn up and gone. This could also be articulated for a residential burglary. What I will have already institutionalized as sheriff is a network of intelligence. I will then reach out to my informants because the criminal element talks to each other. Whereas right now, it's based upon silos. Well, Bennington may have information, but how do we get that information unless we all have a system in place? Manchester may have that. Yes, we put out emails, but is everybody in the agency seeing that? Only those who are working at that particular shift, maybe at that particular time. So I plan on using intelligence-based policing to help people of the communities in order to expand, one, the growth and potential of the Sheriff's Department, which there is means to do so, but also on helping solve crime and make people happy, keep people safe. And if we also hear of something in the, I'll call it the grapevine, then we can interject. We can be that proactive, because the purpose of law enforcement is not to respond to crime, sir. It's to prevent it from ever happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we go, I think we have time for like one last question. I just was wondering what your thoughts were on this subject, kind of related a bit to what we've been talking about earlier with the opioid thing, and that's, of course, the recent legalization, if that's the right word, of small amounts of marijuana. I know I've spoken to some law enforcement folks who are a little concerned about how they will enforce that law. Do you think it's going to be kind of a big problem, or is it just a case of, hey, this is the law now and it's our job to figure it out?
Well, you know, it's a double-edged sword. One, it's the law. So we will do our best to enforce the law. Do I hold any implicit bias for an individual who wishes to partake? No, I do not. If it's done so responsibly and carefully. And that goes for anything else. That goes for alcohol. If you're going to operate a motor vehicle while they're, or after you have indulged in too much alcohol, you should not be driving. The same goes for consuming or digesting or smoking too much marijuana. You should not be driving a motor vehicle. The key point here is to educate those respectfully on overindulgence, to be careful, to be reminded of those that are in the community, and also to respect those. Everybody needs to respect everybody's wishes, because not everybody agrees with the passing of the marijuana law. And I've heard many I've heard from many individuals who don't agree with it. But where I stand is that when I'm writing an affidavit of probable cause and I'm articulating a case, my opinion does not matter. And as a law enforcement officer, my job is to offer the facts and to present those facts. Are there facts that there is concern where THC is at a very high content, where it's being made to not be 15, 20%, but 80, 90%, which could hurt people? Yes, that's a concern. And studies have shown that throughout the states in the western part of our country. But do I think that we as a community can work together, see past this and get through this? Yes, we can. Because we have to listen to everyone, not just a particular few.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it at that for now, but I wanted to thank you again,
thank you, sir.
Mr. Gulley, for taking the time to be with us today and share your views and thinking about this for this very important job in the community.
Ready for the task.
So we've been hearing from Jim Gulley Jr., who is a candidate for the position of Sheriff of Bennington County. As we said near the start, the primary is on August 14th. Early voting is already underway. Mr. Gulley is running against the current incumbent, Chad Schmidt, for that job, so that vote on August 14th very likely will determine who is going to wind up in that job. In other words, it's November next month.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Also, if people have any further questions or if they would like to research further, they can go to my website.
Absolutely. Glad you mentioned that. And the website address is?
www.gulley, Gulley, forsheriff.com. And also there is my Facebook page as well incorporated into the website. So please, if you like and you want to continue to follow, please like my page.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again. And thank you for watching and being with us as well. This has been GNAT-TV's in-depth series. Glad to have you with us today. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again the next time. Have a great day.